Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Shadows of the Lost. A king's regret, a mother's pain, and a battle against the darkness. Synopsis. 8 years have elapsed since the conflict that claimed numerous lives, 8 years since the emergence of an alpha prince, and 8 years since the world has enjoyed peace. Alejandro Rossi, the Lycan King, governed his nation with a just and fair approach. He relished life with his mate Kiara and their children in harmony. That is until the shadow of an unseen danger descends upon them. One misstep, one failure, and one regret unravel the very foundations of his existence. He fails to shield his youngest child, who is taken right before his eyes. It alters everything in moments and leaves him shattered. A mother's anguish brings his queen to her knees, and Alejandro must discover a way to find her before it's too late. This task does not prove to be simple. Will his remorse plunge him back into the darkness he once succumbed to? Will Kiara's suffering cause her to forget all that she cherishes? With time running out, will they reinforce the ties of love, family, and hope before everything falls apart? In the ultimate battle, Alejandro must summon the unity he has fostered one last time to rally the pack and embark on a quest for his little princess. The darkness is expanding and the packs throughout the nation must come together to confront an adversary far greater than they could ever conceive. Episode 1. A message. Kiara. The smell of sizzling barbecue food mixed with the fresh earth and flowers from outside the open window swirled around me, intertwined with the scents of my loved ones. Upbeat music was playing and the warmth of the summer sun bathed my holiday bedroom in a pleasant glow. Skyla, stop it! My son Dante's frustrated voice reached me. Make me, dum-dum. His younger sister, Skyla's snarky reply came. I smiled. The two often clashed. I shook my head, turning back to the mirror and adjusting the top of my dress. I swear this dress wasn't this tight when I bought it, or was it? I wasn't sure, but with Alejandro, my delicious mate, telling me it had looked perfect on me, no wonder I didn't pay attention. I smoothed the creases in the satin dress, doing a slow turn and examining my reflection. The fuchsia pink satin of my mini dress hugged my figure like a glove, emphasizing my narrow waist. I smiled in satisfaction, adding a few delicate pieces of jewelry to finish my look. I ruffled my light sandy brown hair that I had curled loosely, just as a familiar scent hit me, a deep, seductive woody scent with the intoxicating underlayer of fragranced musk. My heart raced as I turned to look at the man who had entered, my king, my mate, my Alejandro. His dark piercing eyes ran over me, flashing a blazing red as they lingered me, making my heart clench as it always did whenever his gaze fell upon me. He wore a white shirt that strained over his muscular body, with the sleeves rolled up. Tattoos covered his arms, neck, parts of his hands and peeked out from his chest from the open buttons of his shirt. His regular chains around his neck remained, and his dangly earring in his right ear flashed as the light caught it. His black hair, which was short on the back and sides with the top styled back, only added to how lethally good he looked right now. If beauty could kill, I'd be dead right now. His deep, seductive voice came, making a whisper of pleasure wash over me as he made his way towards me. The power and arrogance in his every step exuded dominance and his rank. His hands grabbed my hips, pulling me against his firm body, making me gasp as the intense sparks sizzled through me. It's been 9 years we've been together, but every time I see you, it feels like it's for the first time. I raised an eyebrow. Then kiss me like it's the first time, I whispered seductively, locking my arms around his neck, my long nails scraping down his skin. With pleasure, in a flash, I was slammed against the wall next to the vanity table, making me gasp. His body was molded against mine, his lips came crashing against mine in a hot, sizzling kiss that sent sparks exploding within me and pleasure straight to my core, making me clench my thighs together as I kissed him back with equal pleasure and passion. No matter how strong I was, in his arms I was helpless, and I loved it. I loved the way he conquered me, the way he consumed me, the way he kissed me. I moaned helplessly, unable to fight the pleasure that threatened to drown me. Amor mio, he growled, pulling away, breathing hard, his eyes flickered from red to black as he tried to control his emotions. We should go outside before the kids and everyone else realize that we are taking far too long, I whispered, running my hand down his chiseled abs, loving the way they felt through the fabric of his shirt, before playing with his belt. Oh yeah? Keep at that and I'm tearing this dress right off you and you right here. I won't care who hears or not. My stomach fluttered, and as much as that sounded appealing, I knew we had to head outside. Today was our twin baby girl's 6th birthday party. Some of our closest family and friends were waiting right outside too. I better stop then, but tonight I think I want you to do just that. I murmured sensually, tiptoeing and kissing his jaw. At 5 feet 5 inches, even in heels I didn't quite match his 6'4" frame. Without a doubt. He squeezed me, his other hand wrapping around my neck as he kissed me once more, squeezing my throat slightly, cutting off my air supply for a moment. Goddess, I loved this man. We stepped out into the sun, and I scanned the beautiful setup, in bright pink, white, and gold. We were at a family-owned villa not far from both our pack territory and Alejandro's nephew Rayhan's pack territory. Alejandro was the king and the alpha of the Night Walkers pack, whilst his nephew was the alpha of the Black Storm pack. Unlike the rest of us, Alejandro was a Lycan, the only one of his kind. He had created a council and brought all the packs under him, creating peace and law. He had been 34 when I found out he was my mate, when I had been only 18 myself. Despite our 16-year age gap, we were perfect for one another. Back then, he had been consumed by his own darkness, considering himself nothing more than a monster whose only job was to protect our kind. But now, 9 years later, we were together, with a family of our own. Our eldest, Dante, is 8 years old. 2 years later, we had Skyla and Catalia. Today was their 6th birthday and both my princesses were dressed in matching white lace dresses with a bright pink sash, with pink bows in their hair. Mama, Skyla was being annoying, as usual. Dante stated, frowning as he came over to me shoving his hands into the pockets of his black jeans. Like his father, he was wearing a white shirt with his sleeves rolled up. His black hair was styled messily and his eyes, which were as red as the day he was born, were filled with annoyance. What did she do? Alejandro asked. She keeps sprinkling the stupid glitter poppers on me. He almost growled. I'll tell her off, but it is her birthday. Won't you let her have a little fun? I proposed gently, crouching down and brushing a strand of his hair from his face. He rolled his eyes in frustration. Girls? I chuckled lightly as he ran off towards one of the other children. Well, that worked. Alejandro remarked as we walked over to the other adults. We had kept it small, only inviting our close friends and family. But even then, there were plenty of little ones running around. My brother Liam Westwood, the alpha of the Blood Moon, had quintuplets, 5 boys, Jace, Theo, Aries, Carter, and Renji, who were 2.5 years old. Then there was my sister Azura, who was 8 years old, like Dante, and she was the leader of the Westwood quintuplets. She was fiercely protective of them and would let them get up to whatever they wanted. There was also Artemis, my friend Alpha Damon's daughter, who was 2.5 years old, and their 1-year-old son Asher. Rayhan's son Aaron, who was almost 2, and his 1-year-old daughter Sienna. Finally Rayhana's son Tatum, who had turned 2 a few weeks ago. Rayhana was Alejandro's niece. Plenty of kids, but I loved it. Baby, no. Rayhana scolded Tatum as he almost put his hand into the cake. I swear these kids. You were a handful too. Alejandro drawled mockingly. Uncle. Seriously, all I seem to do is run after him. Good exercise. I'm sure she gets enough of a workout. Chris her mate remarked with a smirk. I'll pretend I didn't hear that. Alejandro replied coldly. Pups don't just get made by themselves. Chris shot back. Okay, put aside the male testosterone. Rayhana warned them, kissing Chris on the cheek before pouting at Alejandro. I'm not a baby, uncle. I didn't say you were. Food's done. Dad called. I smiled warmly at him. Although he was just 6 years older than my mate, at 48, he looked no older than his mid-30s. I guess being a werewolf, our genes help in many ways. Kiara, where are the sauces? Mom asked me, drawing me out of my thoughts. Oh, I think I left them inside. I brushed my hair back. Shall I grab them? Dulsanra, Rayhan's mate asked me. I shook my head. I'll go get them. Just keep an eye on the kiddies. I ran towards the lodge, feeling Alejandro's intense gaze on me. I turned, looking at him over my shoulder, and he winked at me from where he stood with Rayhan and Damon. My heart skipped a beat, and I teasingly licked my lips before disappearing inside, unable to wipe the smile from my lips. Goddess, I can never get enough of him. I hurried to the kitchen, about to grab the tray of sauces I had prepared earlier when I froze. An uneasy feeling suddenly filled me and I felt the hair at the back of my neck stand on edge. My heart thundered as I spun around, looking through the archway that led back into the hallway. Leaving the tray I walked out, my eyes blazing a dazzling purple as I scanned the hall. Silence. The only sound I could hear was the laughter and hustle and bustle of the party outside. My wolf was restless, and the urge to follow my instincts overtook me, leading me down the hall and up the stairs to the first floor. The wooden floorboards creaked under my heels. I walked down the hall, paying attention to everything, including the dust particles that hung in the air, the rays of light that shone through the windows, and the sound of my own heart beating like the drums of war as I walked down towards the twins' bedroom. I pushed the door open slowly, scanning the room sharply. The sun had lit the room aglow. The pale blue walls, bright white curtains, and bedding were all in pristine condition. Nothing. I exhaled, that dark feeling of foreboding vanishing, and I shook my head. That was weird. I was about to leave the room, when I saw it, a black piece of paper lying in the center of the double bed. Frowning, I crossed the room staring down at it. I couldn't smell anything strange about it, yet the moment my fingers touched it I felt a burst of power swirl around me. Whatever this paper was, it contained powerful magic. My eyes fell to the words that were written in the center of the paper. They seemed to almost burn orange against the black paper. Pay the debt by the blood of the beast and yield to the Crimson King. What did that even mean? Suddenly the paper caught fire and I gasped, letting go of it, stepping back as it turned to ash before vanishing completely, leaving me completely derailed. Someone had placed that there, but how? With so many alphas and even witches gathered outside, how had no one sensed it? I looked out at the clouds that were now gathering in the skies, and that unsettling feeling that had settled within me returned with vengeance. I turned to hurry downstairs when suddenly flames sprang up all around me, making my heart thunder. Alejandro! I shouted, panic filling me as the heat of the fire began to lick at my skin. Alejandro! Nothing. I tried to mind link him but it only made me dizzy. The screams of the children filled the air and I spun around, trying to run to the window when another blast of flames made the floor give way. I stumbled back trying to find a way out. Which way was the door? I couldn't breathe. The smoke was becoming suffocating, and the lack of oxygen was weakening me. I ran blindly, screaming as the fire burned my skin as I finally burst through the door and into the hall. Even here, everything was on fire. A part of the ceiling caved in and I jumped out of the way just in time. Dante! Caught! Sky! Mom! No one was answering. What was going on? I needed to find Alejandro. Or anyone. Alejandro. Liam. Dulsanra. I stumbled, realizing I was near the stairs, and ran down them as fast as I could, trying to summon my aura to shield me but it wasn't working, I was far too weak. My eyes were on the front door and the fear of where everyone was consumed me. I stumbled through the doors and froze as I stared at the bloodbath before me. The entire forest surrounding the villa was on fire, destroyed as if the fire had been ongoing for hours, yet the most horrifying thing was the bodies of my loved ones that were strewn across the grounds, charred, lifeless, but still clearly recognizable as to whom was who. My heart stopped for a moment as the sheer terror of what had happened consumed me. No. My entire body shook as I looked around in horror at the bodies of all the pups. No. Alejandro, please, this can't be happening. My eyes stung with tears as I searched for him, panicking. I spotted him lying not far from where I stood and ran down the stone steps, falling to my knees near him and turning his burnt body onto his back. Summoning my healing as I tried to heal the burns that covered him. There was no heartbeat. No. Alejandro. Nothing. He was dead. Catalia, how old are you now? Azura questioned Catalia, hands on hips as she did. I knew that the little devil was trying to test her. She acted like she was 18 or some like that, she was a dangerous one. Catalia blinked and held up 6 fingers. That's my pup. Good girl. Azura replied, with an approving nod and went off to fuss over one of those Westwood pups. I may see them often enough, but they all look the same. Well, maybe they don't, but to me, they do. Not my fault that there's an entire army of them. Kia's taking her time, Liam remarked, glancing towards the villa. I'll go take a look. I took a final drag on my cigarette before tossing it to the ground and making sure I snuffed it out with my boot, walking towards the house, almost stepping on one of these roach-sized pups. How are they all over the place? I followed her scent, frowning as I realized she was upstairs, but what got me worried was the speed of her heartbeat. It was far too fast for my liking. In a flash, I was up the stairs. My heart was racing with worry the moment I saw her on the floor in the girl's bedroom. Kiara! Kiara! I lifted her into my arms, tapping her face. What happened? Come on, wake up! Her eyes flew open, blazing purple, and she sucked in a breath as if she had been deprived of oxygen. Amor mio! I hugged her tightly, my own voice hoarse, my heart thudding with relief as I held her close, stroking her back. I got you. Al, she whispered, grabbing my shirt, her heart beating erratically as she looked around and then up at me. The sound of the kids screaming and laughing from outside reached us and she exhaled, slumping in my arms with clear relief. Thank the goddess! You're all okay? She murmured, her lips brushing my neck before she showered my neck with quick kisses, sending rivets of sparks through me. Yeah, we're okay, but what about you? What happened? She looked around the room and the ground as if searching for something. There was a note. Her eyes looked haunted as she looked around the room. I kissed her lips softly, my hand twisting in her hair and stroking her waist, wanting her to know she was going to be okay. It's okay, everything is all right. Relax. I reassured her before looking around to see what note she meant. Where's the note? She shook her head, looking confused, and I wondered if last night X had drained her out. She placed a hand on her glossy hair, and sighed, biting those luscious lips of hers, before she shook her head in defeat. Never mind. We'll deal with this later, shall we go outside? I asked, stroking her thigh. She nodded, looking into my eyes, and I felt my stomach twist. The look of fear that filled her soft blue-rimmed soft green eyes was one I hadn't seen in years. Whatever happened was serious, and I was definitely going to ask her later. For now, I'll get the men to scour the area. I stood up, lifting her to her feet and wrapped my arms around her tightly, never wanting to let her go. If there was one thing I hated above everything else, it was seeing my queen in any kind of pain. I kissed her neck and shoulders sensually, my hand massaging her back comfortingly until her heartbeat steadied. I love you. She looked up at me, her eyes holding so many emotions, and I frowned. Whatever happened had shaken her. And I love you, amor mio. I replied, gripping her chin before kissing her passionately, only breaking away when she gasped for air. We'll talk later, all right? She nodded, exhaling, and giving me a tight hug before we returned to the garden after grabbing the sauces. Are you okay, Kiara? Scarlett, Kiara's mother, asked her. Yeah, perfectly. Kiara replied, blushing lightly under everyone's gaze. My queen always looked hot, but I swear, each passing year she seemed to somehow become even hotter. Right, everyone sit down. Raven, Kiara's brother's mate and also Kiara's best friend, called out. She was probably the smallest one here, I'm sure Dante was her height already. No idea how she had 5 pups at once, she had looked a sight. Is the Alpha Council still on next month despite Elder Alan's health? Rayhan asked me as he took the seat opposite. Yeah, we can't really delay it, the winds are changing. It's needed. I glanced over at Elijah, his frown deepening. There was something afoot. After years of living in peace, I could feel it in the air. Something was coming, but I didn't know what. Do you boys really need to discuss work? Maria, Rayhan's mother, scolded. Blame him, I didn't do anything. I replied coldly. My brother, Rafael Rossi, died 5 years ago protecting Maria, his mate, and Alessandra, a death I won't ever get over. It was taking its toll on Maria too. With each passing year, she got weaker, slimmer, and more exhausted, as if simply living was becoming harder for her. Although she had kept her sanity, with our kids serving as a distraction for her, it still wasn't enough. I didn't want her to lose herself, but when you are mated to a powerful alpha, the parting is even harder. Alejandro. Maria's voice brought me out of my thoughts, and I raised an eyebrow. Yeah. Are you okay? She asked, concern clear in her grey eyes. I smirked, 100%. I replied. She smiled slightly, giving me a nod. Once upon a time, we couldn't stand each other, I'm sure RAF's proud of our bond now. Daddy, may I sit next to you? Catalia asked softly, her large dark eyes were the same color as mine yet were filled with a warmth mine lacked. Sure thing. My youngest pup, I swear despite how crude my language was, this angel was the politest sweetest thing on this planet, and sometimes I felt she was far too pure for this world. Unlike her elder twin and brother, her special ability was completely different from theirs. She smelt of something soft and sweet, yet you could only smell it when you were around her. You wouldn't sense her coming or be able to track her scent, which can become worrying at times in case she wandered off. Kiara sat down on my other side, kissing my lips softly, and I was relieved. She seemed a little better again. After eating, I can't wait to cut the cake. Skyla stated, she was the elder of the twins and I swear she was Lucifer incarnate at times. Once you finish your food properly, Scarlet told her granddaughter. Scarlet was only 3 years older than me, yet her daughter was my mate, it was fun when that came out in the open. Who would have thought? Skyla's sharp green eyes turned to Kiara. Can I use the big knife to cut the cake? She asked, her eyes sparkling. Not the big one, now eat your food. Kiara replied, shaking her head. Skyla pouted with displeasure and I smirked. You ain't getting away with when your mama's around, pup. Kiara's hand found mine, and she gave it a squeeze, almost as if she was reassuring herself. We'll figure out the note later, but whatever it was, don't worry about it. I will always protect you and the kids. I said through the link, letting my confidence and reassurance flow through the bond. She gave me one of those beautiful smiles of hers and nodded, and I knew she was going to be okay. I just hoped that whatever it was no big deal. Time to cut the cake. Mom called, making both Skyla and Catalia turn in excitement. I smiled. The kids had just spent the last hour playing games and I think they were ready for some dessert now. Oh, I can't wait! Skyla exclaimed, skipping over to the cake, pulling her sister along with her. Alejandro picked both up, making them giggle when he kissed their cheeks. Daddy's beard is pokey. Catalia giggled cutely, patting her dad's cheek before kissing him. Yeah well, I ain't going to have a baby face now am I? Alejandro smirked, nudging his cheek against her own, making her giggle. Where's the knife? Skyla asked. This girl and her love for weapons. Here, now be careful, okay? I warned her, passing her the knife and placing Catalia's hand on top of her sister's as everyone began singing Happy Birthday. I kept my hand on top of the girls, guiding it to the cake and helped them slice it before I took the cake and fed them both a piece each, kissing them after I did so. Happy birthday, my angels! I whispered, before my eyes met Alejandro's. He leaned forward, kissing me softly, before he turned to the girls in his arms. Now, how about you two feed me some cake? Let's see if it at least tastes any better than it looks. Daddy! It's pretty. It's a unicorn cake. Skyla scolded. Yeah, we're werewolves. Why would you want a cake of an animal that doesn't exist and one that looks weird? Alejandro remarked, allowing them to feed him cake. All children would want that cake. Dulsanra added. Guys, I wouldn't mind a cake like that. Rayhana added. Actually, I wouldn't want a cake like that, but then again, I'm not a kid, right Del? Dante asked Dulsanra, giving her a charming smirk. I shook my head. Ever since the first time he saw the white-haired beauty, he had developed an infatuation with her, and despite getting older, that didn't seem to have vanished much to the irritation of his cousin Rayhan. Dulsanra was a hybrid witch demon, and unlike the rest of us who saw her in her human form, Dante saw her demon form continuously, a form that was so dangerously beautiful, that any unmated wolf wouldn't be able to deny her beauty when she shifted. Right, my cho. Dulsanra replied, squeezing his cheeks. He pouted, tugging away, despite the blush on his cheek. Rayhan frowned, pulling Dulsanra into his arms and making a few of the others chuckle. This was an ongoing thing with them, but I did hope Dante got over it. I sliced the rest of the cake, passing everyone a plate, and was just about to put a slice of the chocolate cake into one more plate for Alejandro when his strong arms wrapped around me from behind. Not going to feed me, amor mio? His deep seductive voice sent shivers of pleasure through me as his hand caressed my stomach, making a jolt of pleasure go through me. Won't you feed me? I countered with a pout as I broke a piece of the cake with my fingers, turning in his arms and resisting the urge to sigh as I brushed against the bulge in his pants. No, I'd rather fill you up later with something else, he winked at me, before taking hold of my hand and taking the cake from my fingertips. Dad cleared his throat, shooting him a glare, and I giggled. 9 years together and despite Dad himself being open with PDA, Alejandro's no-filter mouth was a bit too much for him. But I loved it, I liked how dirty my man got. I bit my lip, my stomach nodding as he slowly licked my fingers, not giving a care for Dad's intense glare of disapproval. You really do like to tease him. I mind-linked him with amusement. I do, I won't deny that. He replied. But I also want to stuck you day in and day out. Not my fault he has an issue with that. I kissed his lips. The taste of chocolate cake lingered in his mouth, and I sighed. Perhaps that letter was just. I don't know, but whatever it was, everything seems okay, everyone's happy. I pushed the feeling of unease away, but even then, I knew I couldn't ignore that someone had placed it there. Or it had been done by magic, either way, I needed to tell Alejandro. I opened my mouth, but once again I felt blank, unable to form the letters. The more I thought about it, the more the words became jumbled. Just then, Dad and Mom came over, making me give up on my futile attempt. So, Marcel didn't come again? Dad asked quietly, his eyes on Mom before he looked at us. I frowned slightly, looking up at Alejandro with concern. Marcel was Alejandro's other brother, however, due to a complicated past his son, Leo, who was now 17, had begun to hate the rest of the family, especially his cousin Rayhan. No. I don't think we'll be seeing him on any future occasion. Alejandro said coldly, and although his face was emotionless, this was something that caused him enough worry and concern. Despite how cold and uncaring he often looked or may appear, he was one of the most attentive and loving people I knew. I placed a hand on his chest, and he looked down at me, giving me a cold smirk that told me he was fine. He'll come around, Dad said quietly. I'm not going to count on it, but I'll keep trying. Alejandro replied, taking out a cigarette and lighting it. Night had blanketed the woods, and everyone had left. I had just put the girls to bed and walked over to the window, satisfied to see that patrol was posted right outside. Breathe, Kia, it's nothing. But then why couldn't I even speak about the letter? Something was up. I glanced at the sleeping girls on the bed before I left the room, closing the door silently behind me when suddenly, someone grabbed my arms and spun me around, my back slamming against a hard chest. It took me a fraction of a second before the sparks that coursed through me gave away who my attacker was. It's rude to manhandle people, Mr. Rossi. I scolded with a pout. It's a crime to look so cute too, Mrs. Rossi. He growled back, making me giggle breathlessly. Oh yeah? How will you punish me for my crime then? I challenged him seductively, turning my head to stare up at him, not missing how his eyes flashed, dragging his gaze away from my breasts. How about I show you? I smiled. The letter flashed in my mind and I glanced back at the girl's bedroom. You're still worried? I've had the men do a thorough search of the area. You need to relax. He kissed my neck softly and I closed my eyes, leaning into his hold. Maybe, I breathed, my core clenching in anticipation. Allow me to help, he whispered huskily, his lips attacking my neck, that sent sparks of pleasure erupting through me. He lifted me up bridal style and carried me swiftly down the hall to our room, kicking the door shut behind us and locking it before he walked over to the bed and dropped me onto it unceremoniously, making me gasp. That smirk on his lips told me he was about to stuck me the way I liked best. Alejandro style. I bit my lip, the burning desire of want pooling in my heart. I could smell my arousal perfuming the air, and from the way his eyes glowed red, I knew it was getting to him too. "You are already wet and I haven't even punished you," he remarked arrogantly. I let my mental barrier down, letting him know exactly how much I wanted him. "Keep going with those dirty thoughts and I'll be you until you black out, amor mio." He growled threateningly, gazing down at my body, the look of pure animalistic hunger on his handsome face only making me crave him even more. "Punish me, Alpha," I moaned, reaching up to kiss him. One of his hands wrapped around my throat, pinning me to the bed, and he smirked. "Not so fast." He didn't kiss me, simply moving away and placing kisses down my jaw before he sat back, releasing my hands and yanking my dress down. His eyes darkened with approval. "You're divine," he growled approvingly before ripping my dress off completely. The fabric chafed my skin, leaving me in nothing. "Don't tease me, Alejandro," I moaned. "This is a punishment, remember?" He mocked huskily. I moaned. I cried out at the light touch that was only making my body scream for more. "Look how wet you are," he growled. "I'm wet for you, baby, for me." I whimpered. But he wouldn't, not until my body came to the brink. I reached down, stroking his hard shaft, but he didn't let me for long, flipping me over onto my stomach. "Oh, Alejandro!" I moaned wantonly. "That's its baby girl, beg to be stucked. Please, a king can never disobey his queen," he whispered huskily. The sun shone through the curtains, and I could still feel the after effects of last night. The ache between my legs was a pleasant reminder of what had happened. Goddess, the man had incredible stamina, but I wouldn't change it for anything. I turned in bed, missing the feel of his arms around me. I turned, touching the other side of the bed, although his scent lingered in the room, his side of the bed was cold. I sat up, glancing towards the bathroom door, brushing my hair back from my face. "Alejandro." I mind-linked. "Morning. I hope you slept well." "Perfectly. Why didn't you wake me up? What about breakfast?" I asked. "We didn't bring any omegas along for the cooking, so it was just the 5 of us. You were spent after last night. As much as you love spreading those legs for me, you push your limits." I smiled, rolling my eyes. "As if you're not to blame for me wanting you." "Good, because I intend to stuck you like that every day." I shook my head. "Good. And yet, about breakfast, kinda not managing." "I'll be there in 20. I got out of bed, wincing at how sore I felt, and made my way to the bathroom. Goddess, this man was a beast, but I knew that already. I turned the shower on and leant against the cool tiles, allowing the warm water to wash over me before I quickly soaped my body and washed my hair. Those kitties wouldn't wait for long. Once showered, I pulled on a pair of white shorts and a floral print chiffon blouse before leaving our bedroom and heading downstairs. I could hear Skyla talking to Alejandro about something, and it made me smile. I stopped at the archway that looked into the kitchen area, tilting my head as I watched Alejandro leaning against the counter drinking coffee, whilst Dante buttered some toast. Are you making Dante make the breakfast? I asked, amused. No, but I had to since Dad here isn't able to. Dante frowned as he took the toast he had just buttered and gave his sisters 2 slices each. It's called survival skills. Alejandro replied, smirking as Dante frowned displeased, before he turned his burning gaze on me. Oops, 1 pound, Daddy! Skyla exclaimed, holding her hand out. This one was thrifty. She made an agreement with Alejandro that every time she heard him say or she would ask for a pound. Only thing is, it didn't make Alejandro stop and second, he never carried a pound around. This goes for the next 5. Alejandro said, handing her a 5-pound note. 3 pounds left. I sighed as I walked over to the counter and kissed both girls on the cheek. Good morning, Mama. Catalia smiled at me. Her hair was just like mine in color, with eyes as dark as Alejandro's whilst Skyla had black hair and green eyes. Good morning, my angel. I replied, ruffling her hair. Morning. Skyla said, tucking the note into her pocket carefully. Good morning, and thank you Dante for making your sister's toast. Now, who wants eggs or bacon? I asked, going over to the fridge after kissing Dante's forehead. Can I have you? Alejandro said, making my eyes fly open in shock. Al. Food. What do you mean you want Mama? You're mated, let her breathe. Skyla added, dramatically shaking her head as if she wasn't 6 but 16. Eat your food. Alejandro growled, only for her to give him a challenging look before smoothly returning to her toast. I placed the egg carton on the worktop just as Alejandro's strong arms wrapped around me, kissing my neck. You look fine, I smiled, closing my eyes at his touch, goddess. Daddy swore again. Skyla's voice came, bringing us out of our moment. Yeah, I know. Alejandro growled, kissing my lips before walking over to Skyla and prodding her forehead. Ouch, Daddy! Why are girls so loud? Dante said, taking his bowl of cereal to the counter. Not all girls. Catalia replied as I cracked 2 eggs into the sizzling pan. If you find girls annoying, then why do you like Dulsanra? She giggled. I looked over my shoulder as Dante's brow furrowed, pouting. He had so many young pups wanting his attention, yet his infatuation with Dulsanra remained. I told you to tone that shit down. Alejandro added disapprovingly. I didn't do anything. Dante frowned. His eyes seemed to turn a brighter red. Guys, I said, making both father and son turn their attention to me. I behaved, Mama. Dante added coldly, about to get off his seat, ready to walk out. Stay. It's fine, you were okay. Just eat. Let's not argue this early. I said, giving him a warm smile. Baby, don't bother him, it's not his fault. I added through the mind link. He's getting older, he can't continue this. I know, but not today. I sighed. Fine. Alejandro said, coming over and kissing my lips. I kissed him back, smiling up at him when Skyla gasped. Oh, I got an idea. Can I get 50 pence every time Daddy says shit? This girl's greedy. No, you can't. Alejandro growled. But daddy, you say it a lot. And you said it too, Skyla. We aren't allowed to. Catalia whispered. I know, I guess daddy just gets away with shit. She said, making Alejandro frown at her. The two were the most similar, and this banter was the norm for a Rossi family breakfast. Thank you for our birthday party yesterday, Mama, Daddy. Catalia piped in softly when I placed their plates in front of them. You are most welcome, darling. I replied, kissing her forehead from across the counter. Anytime, princess. Alejandro added, pouring 2 glasses of orange juice and walking off to the far counter. That's another pound, Skyla chimed in. It ain't. Alejandro replied, bringing over the hot chocolate that he had made for me. And another. Daddy, you owe me. Skyla, you have 5 pounds already. I need more. When I grow up, I'm going to travel the world. You're 6, and you ain't going anywhere until you're 25. Alejandro added, taking a seat next to me. I can too. Cannot. And this is exactly how our mornings went, and you know what? I wouldn't change a thing. Once breakfast was over, I washed up and prepared them a lunch hamper, yesterday's events returning to my mind. Pay the debt by the blood of the beast and yield to the Crimson King. Those words screamed in my head, but I couldn't voice them. It involved magic, I was sure of that. I just needed to find a way to relay the message to Alejandro. It gave me an ominous feeling, and there was more to it. Amor mio. I turned when Alejandro walked in, wrapping his arms around me. I'm taking the pups down by the river. Alejandro, I don't know. After yesterday, I feel worried. I'm going to be with them. We won't go far, you get some rest. I'll make sure we have dinner delivered tonight, all right. I looked up at him and nodded. I didn't feel any unease today, it should be okay. Okay, I'll get a lie in. I smiled. We had decided a few days ago that he would mind the kids for the day, and I could sleep in. I needed it. The last week had been crazy, and all I wanted was to get back into bed and get some good rest. Promise to behave for your daddy, okay? My eyes fixed on Skyla as I hugged and kissed Catalia before meeting the other two. And don't go too far. I added, looking at Alejandro. We won't. He said, pulling me into his arms. Get some rest. Oh, I will, I replied, gazing into those gorgeous dark eyes of his. Goddess, he was far too handsome. I'm going to miss you in bed. Oh yeah? We both know you don't get much sleep when I'm in bed with you. His hands squeezed me, and I raised an eyebrow. True, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I replied softly, locking my arms around his neck and pulling him down to kiss his luscious lips. He pulled me against him, our bodies molded as one as he kissed me back harder, his lips dominating mine as he plunged his tongue into my mouth, making my core clench. Daddy, I'm going to die of old age, you're making us wait so long. Skyla's voice came. Alejandro growled, tugging away and glaring at his little girl. This one's a nightmare. She's annoying. Dante agreed. All girls are, but can we go now? Patience is a virtue, guys. I smiled amusedly as they all headed out and I watched them walk down the path. Catalia gave me a wave and blew me a kiss before she skipped off. Alejandro turned, giving me one of his smirks before they vanished from view and I shut the door. I guess I'll text the girls a little and then get some rest. I awoke suddenly. The sun was still in the sky, albeit lower, and I stretched. Had my phone rang or something? But there was only silence. I reached for it, unlocking it, and smiled, seeing Alejandro had sent some pictures. In a few photos Dante was in the river, clearly enjoying himself, and Catalia was making something out of branches whilst Skyla was throwing rocks into the water. They look so cute, and clearly having fun. Did you have lunch? I tried to mind Link, but it seems he was a little out of range, so I text him instead. All finished, they ate well. Did you get some rest? He text back. Yes, I can't mind Link. How far out are you? I frowned. I told them not to go too far, but maybe I was just being paranoid. We went towards the waterfall. We will head back in an hour or two. Perfect, but please be safe, Alejandro. I'm still worried, and have fun. Don't worry, I had the men do a thorough check. I read his message and nodded to myself. Maybe I needed to calm down. I put my phone down and yawned, stretching as I stood up. Maybe I could have a bubble. My heart thumped when my gaze fell on the black paper on the bedside drawer. My stomach was twisting as I reached for it before I froze. No, I needed to take a picture of it this time. I grabbed my phone, my heart thumping as I clicked the camera on and looked at the paper, unable to make out the letters. I gingerly reached for it, my camera at the ready. Yet the moment my hand made contact with it, I felt a strong surge of power. My phone slipped from my hand, clattering to the floor, and my eyes were stuck to the paper. The orange words glowed on the paper, searing like embers. A debt must always be repaid, by blood or by life. I dropped the paper as it caught flames and turned to ash. I stepped back, my heart thundering as I grabbed my phone, not caring for the cracked screen, and unlocked it, needing to call Alejandro. But just then, I felt something weigh over me. My vision blurred and then, there was darkness. The kids were having a blast, and as much as I wanted Kiara to have been here, I knew yesterday that whatever happened was on her mind and she needed rest. I made sure the villa was surrounded by guards. The kids were safe with me, but I was not going to risk leaving her alone. This place was pretty neat, with the mountain backdrop, the waterfall, and the clear river. The greenery and the trees were in full bloom, and the sound of birds chirping in the trees rang in the clear blue sky. I frowned, watching Dante take his shirt off, seemingly irritated, and I realized what he was about to do. Dante, don't! I warned, closing the gap between us and grabbing his hand as he was about to yank the necklace of concealment off. Dad, I just want to go in the water without this. I feel stronger without it. He frowned. A sliver of guilt rushed through me, knowing we were practically subduing him as a person, but without it, he had the aura of a full-fledged alpha. That was something I couldn't risk anyone finding out. He had worn this necklace since birth. It had been given to us as a repayment gift by a witch when Kiara healed her. Dante, listen to me, son. I crouched down, placing my hands on his shoulders. I know you don't want to keep it on, but it's for your safety. I hope he understood. The annoyance in his eyes told me he did, but he didn't like it. When I grow up, I'm never hiding who I am, he said defiantly. I nodded, brushing his wet hair off his forehead. Got it, I just need you strong enough to protect your. Something was wrong. I could feel it, like a wave of darkness and unease washing over me. My heart thundered as I stood up, scanning the area sky and caught. Where were they? Skyla's heartbeat reached my ears. Girls? I turned sharply, seeing the top of both their heads behind a large rock. Thank the goddess they were together. Kat's ability of being able to hide her heartbeat messed with me. I grabbed Dante despite his protests, rushing over to the girls. Something was off, and I wasn't going to stay in this opening when suddenly, wolves burst from the trees, in every direction. There were far too many to count, their fur all similar shades of auburn and browns, and their eyes burning a shade of crimson-orange that I had never seen before. But the thing that threw me was that I hadn't sensed, smelt, or heard them at all. Stay with your sisters, I told Dante as I shifted. In a flash, I ripped the first wolf that reached us to shreds, turning my head to swipe another one away from my pups. I couldn't even mind link anyone, I was out of range. I heard Kot whimper, feeling Skyla's aura. We didn't know what her ability was, but when emotional, she had an aura, although it was faint. I slammed another one away from them. One wolf or 100, I would handle them all. The smell of blood, the menacing growls of the burning-eyed wolves and the beating hearts of my pups were filling my senses. My only thought was to protect them by all means. Dad! Dante shouted. I turned, ripping the heart of one of the wolves right out of his chest, before it could attack the girls. Blood sprayed over them, making Skyla shriek, her arms tightly around Catalia whilst Dante stood there defensively. I hissed as I felt the claws of another wolf dig deep into my back. I growled, throwing him off, allowing my aura to roll of me in waves, but it did nothing to stop the wolves from advancing. I turned, ripping through two more. If I was alone, I'd be fine, but this was a nightmare. Dad's phone. I heard Dante mutter. I knew what he was planning, calling for help. No. I growled, but he didn't even pay attention, darting out from behind the rock and aiming for my phone that lay on the rock a few meters away. Several wolves hissed, turning their gaze on Dante. Over my dead body. I growled, launching myself at the back of the closest one. Another barreled into my back and I was thrown to the rocky ground, a wolf ripped into my leg and another 4 jumped at me. Dad! Dante's voice came. I turned, killing 2 instantly, my blazing red eyes filled with a rage. The darkness of my aura enveloped the area, yet even then the flame-eyed wolves refused to back away. Almost as if they didn't feel pain, relentlessly attacking until they faced death. I ripped another 2 hearts out, the taste of my own blood in my mouth. I lunged forward, blocking the girls from being attacked. I never ran. But for their safety, I needed to. I wasn't going to win without them getting hurt. I grabbed the girls, rushing for Dante, who was fighting a wolf off with a stick. He may be 8, but he was already an impressive fighter. Yet, he was still just a pup, he was no match for these Growling menacingly, I ripped the attacker off him. I was about to grab Dante when I was thrown to the ground. The girl slipped out of my arms. I just about managed to cushion Skyla's head from hitting the ground. Catalia! Skyla sobbed. I turned, seeing one of the wolves grabbing her and running. No! Fear consumed me like never before, digging its claws into me as I growled, running after the wolf only for another 6 to jump on my back. I stared at her, seeing the wolf run further and further away, her body being flung around like a rag doll as he ran with her. Please no! I growled murderously, the ground vibrating at the sheer force as I ripped them off when I saw Dante fall to the ground, his entire body shuddering. Torn. The choice before me was me up. There was no way I could choose between my pups. Catalia was getting further and further away, and Dante was about to get killed, blood dripping down his chest from where he had been slashed. In a flash, I was before him, killing the attacking wolf before I grabbed him and Skyla, running after Catalia, the wolves doing their best to stop me. Their heartbeats were thundering like roaring storms, and I knew the fact that they had gotten so close without me sensing them meant there was magic involved. Their scents were exactly the same. Of fire and ash. Whatever they were, it wasn't normal. I tried to push at the limitations of my mind link, but I had really come too far out. This wasn't the plan. I should have listened to Kiara. Catalia. I could no longer see the wolf that had taken her. My heart was thudding as I pushed myself. My baby girl, I couldn't allow anything to happen to her. Suddenly, the entire forest around us erupted in flames. Catalia's distant cry reached my ears, but I could no longer make sense of direction. The flames rose higher and higher, and Skyla began coughing, struggling to breath. Dante was pale, his entire body still convulsing, and I saw the trickle of blood from his nose. I kept running, but it was only getting harder to breathe. I needed to get these two to safety before I went after Catalia. The painful decision before me ripped my heart into two. It clenched painfully in my chest as I forced myself to turn, knowing I was turning my back on my pup for the two in my arms. Fear that something might happen to her or that she may die consumed me, but I had to hold on to hope that she'll be okay, because if I went after her, the two in my arms surely would. I promise you, baby girl, Daddy will come for you, and when I find the one behind this, I'll kill them in the most painful possible way. I'm okay, I said, looking up at Julio, who had found me. My body was aching and I could barely think straight. What happened? He asked, frowning. Should I call the Alpha? I don't know, there was a paper. I'll call him just to see how they are. I murmured, looking at my own shattered phone. Worry, pain, and fear were swirling inside of me, but it wasn't my own emotions, Alejandro. What was happening? Contact Alejandro! I exclaimed suddenly, making Julio grab his phone, but just then, the sound of running reached my ears and Alejandro appeared at the door, blood and dirt covering his body. Clad in only torn sweatpants which told me had shifted. My eyes snapped to the limp bodies of Dante and Skyla in his arms, and I sprang up. What happened? I cried, my powers surging around me. Panic and worry consumed me as I took in their state. Skyla's heartbeat was steady yet weak, but she seemed to simply be unconscious whilst Dante's heartbeat was racing, his skin was clammy and he was shaking. He placed the kids on the bed, and I quickly placed my hands on both of them, my purple aura blazing around me. As a blessed wolf from the Ashton bloodline, I had the gift of healing. Skyla began to heal, yet I could feel the pain Dante was in, even when the injury on his chest healed. What was this? Goddess help me! I removed my hand from Skyla, caressing her hair when I froze. My heart thundering as I realized Catalia wasn't here. I snapped my gaze to Alejandro, trying not to let the fear of the worst consume me. Where's Catalia? I asked, unable to stop the distress and worry from seeping into my voice. Please baby, tell me she's okay. I stared into his eyes that were racked with guilt and sorrow, still pouring my healing into Dante. Trying to focus with everything I had. Alejandro. Answer me. They took her. His pained reply came, placing his hand on my arm. My breath hitched as one jerked away from him, my entire body shaking. No. No. Goddess no. Kiara. I'll get her back, I promise you. Go. Please go find her. I said, my voice harsh and shaky, unable to even look at him, trying not to break down. It wasn't his fault, but I needed my baby. He didn't speak and I felt a surge of guilt, my own at my behavior, but most of it was his before he put his walls up. I looked at him as he turned to leave the room, and I placed my hand on his arm. Wait. I whispered. I let my healing pour into him, healing him, before tugging him close and reaching up to caress his jaw. Our eyes met and the pain suddenly became unbearable. You got this. I whispered, trying to control the storm of tears that were threatening to fall. He turned, wrapping his arms around me tightly, his heart thudding as much as mine. Although I didn't stop trying to heal Dante, I closed my eyes, unable to stop the tears from spilling down my cheek. Please bring her back. I whispered beggingly as he kissed my cheek. I will. He promised, letting go of me and the loss of his touch hurt. Do I tell him I can't heal Dante? No. I needed him to go find Catalia. Just the thought of her being taken terrified me. I will deal with this. Please Goddess protect our babies. His lips met mine for a fleeting moment before he left the room swiftly. I took a deep breath and looked at Julio, who was standing in the hall. Give me a phone. I said, trying to control my emotions. Here. He handed me his phone, unlocked, and I quickly dialed Dulsanra's number, my hand shaking as I stared down at Dante. His heartbeat was still racing and nothing I did was helping him, he wasn't injured. Whatever this was, it was something else. Hey, Kia. Dulsanra's voice came. Del, is it possible for you to come to the villa? I asked, trying to keep my voice strong, but even then, it trembled. Of course I can, Kiara, is everything okay? No, nothing is. There's something going on and I wish once again, I wasn't able to utter anything about the letters. Dante, there's something wrong with him, and Catalia's been taken, and you know we can't track her. I whispered. I heard her take a sharp intake of breath. We are coming. She said, her voice was strong and comforting. I closed my eyes, praying she could help. Julio took the phone from me, his eyes full of concern. "It's magic, isn't it?" he asked, looking at Dante. "I think so," I whispered, dropping to my knees as I stroked his hair. His trousers were torn where he had been bitten. I had healed that too, but there was something else going on inside of him. I kissed his forehead, trying to fight my tears. "Mama," Skyla stirred before she opened her eyes and jumped up, looking around, terror clear in her eyes. "I got you, baby," I whispered as she launched herself into my arms, breaking into tears. "Mama, Cot. Daddy will bring Cot home. I promise," I whispered as she began sobbing in my arms. I cried silently, rocking her, one arm tightly around her and the other holding Dante's trembling one. I felt the surge of magic from outside and my heart leapt knowing that Dulsanra was here. Within seconds, she and Rayhan were running up the stairs, their scent hitting my nose before they stepped into the room. "Kiara," Dulsanra said, her eyes burning red. She was currently in her demon form. I stood up and she hugged me tightly, Skyla crushed between us both, and only then did I realize that I was shaking too. "We are going to fix this," she promised, softly kissing Skyla on the head as she continued to sob into my shoulder. Rayhan was by Dante's side, placing the large bag he was carrying down, checking his pulse and forehead. A deep frown set on his face with his shoulder-length black hair falling in his face, before he turned to us frowning. "He's in pain, but it's not physical," he murmured softly. "Let me see what I can do." Dulsanra let go of me, determination clear on her face. "I'm going to head out to help Uncle. It's going to be okay, we will find her." Rayhan reassured me, placing his hand on Skyla's head for a moment before he left the room, pulling his leather jacket off as he did so. Rayhan was the finest tracker that I knew, and I was confident that his help could prove vital. It just terrified me that Catalia's special ability would deter them immensely. Of all three, her being taken was my worst nightmare. "It's magic, but there's something else too, and it's powerful," Dulsanra murmured as she stepped back from Dante and unzipped the bag that Rayhan had placed down. "Will you be able to fix it?" I asked. All I could think of was how he had given me that smile before leaving this morning. Who would have thought this was how he'd come home to me? "I don't know, but I intend to try." Determination was clear in her voice as she planted a kiss on Dante's forehead before she gave me a smile. "Don't worry, our little Cho isn't so easy to take down." I nodded, watching her begin to draw symbols on the floor, before she lifted Dante, placing him in the center and began to light some candles. "I think it's a curse," she whispered. "What?" "I don't know for sure, but there's something that's happened." "I'll do my best," she murmured, placing a few crystals down. She stepped back as she began whispering a spell. Her power surged around her, the flames burned high, and I saw red veins spread from Dante's chest where his injuries had once been. The candles flickered and Dulsanra's brow was furrowed with concentration as her voice got louder. The veins began seeping from Dante's chest, spreading across the symbols on the floor and towards Dulsanra. "Del, be careful," I warned. Something was off. The air seemed to become colder and I could feel something else in this room. I stepped back, cradling Skyla tightly, my heart thudding when suddenly Dulsanra was cut off. Blood sprayed from her neck as she choked, before she was thrown against the far wall. A sickening crunch filled the room before she crumbled to the floor. The candles were blown out and a sharp wind rushed through the room ominously, shattering the windows. Del! I screamed, rushing to her side. I placed my hand on her neck, healing her as her heartbeat faded. Her heartbeat steadied, yet I could sense the same thing from her that I did from Dante. Oh please no! Del! She didn't reply, her body as lifeless as my son's, that lay not far from her. Goddess, why is this happening? And who is responsible for this? Fear ran through my veins, and, although I may be the most robust shifter out here, I felt helpless. Catalia. She was all I could think of. Remembering the way, the wolf's teeth were clamped around her tiny body. The blood dripping from his mouth, her blood, and the terror in her eyes as they got further and further away. I'd give my life for her safety. Then Kiara's pain, the way she pushed me away, ripped at my heart. I knew she was in pain, a mother's reaction, after all. She was the perfect mother to our child, not like my own mother, who played dead for years and then came back with her psychotic plans to destroy the world over 8 years ago. She sure didn't care if any of us went down with her. But Kiara was firm, fair, and affectionate. She loved her pups unconditionally and, even then, made time for me. Her family, our pack, and her friends, as well as for a particular one I couldn't stand. She cared for everyone and did her best to be there for us all. I sped up, the wind rushing through my fur. There was no way I would be able to track Catalia, so instead, we were trying to follow the tracks of the wolves, or hoping for any speck of blood that left a trail. Many of my men were nowhere assisting, but it was futile. The ground near the river where the fight had occurred was now just a field of ash, not even a body or a drop of blood remained, that just made things harder. Alpha Rayhan is here to help. Rayhan? Kiara must have told them, and I'm guessing his spitfire of a mate must have teleported them here. A reminder that I wasn't alone. We will find her. Fill him in on everything, I'm still trying to scour the entire north side. There's no paw prints. Understood, Alpha. 14 hours had passed, but there was still no answer or clue. I was not going to let them get away with it. The fear that so many hours had passed and what may have happened to her consumed me like poison. I didn't feel the link break, so she was still alive, that was all I had to hold on to. The exhaustion caught up to me, but there was still no sign of her so that I couldn't stop. I had alerted the alpha of the packs that I truly trusted to send their men out, but at the same time, I also didn't want to put Catalia in more harm than she already was by telling everyone that my daughter was taken. Alpha, there's nothing. They are gone without a trace. Darien, my beta's voice came through the link. I can't stop looking. I whispered back, trying to control the agony in my voice. Alejandro, look, let's let everyone know, put a prize out there for her. Let out that you are willing to give anything to the kidnappers. Surely, there must be a reason for this, and they must want something. We can also contact our business partners in the human world and make it clear that your daughter is taken. Someone may have seen her. We will find her. The voice of reason that stuck by me even on my darkest days long ago. He was a friend that had been by my side from the start. But I can't stop searching when she's out there. Not yet. Al, please. Kiara needs you. Dante and Luna Dulsanra are still unconscious. I froze in my tracks, my heart thundering. What? What do you mean? Kiara wasn't able to heal Dante? The hybrid Luna tried to cast a spell to fix whatever was ailing Dante, but whatever it was spread to her. We told Alpha Rayhan, and he returned to check on her before continuing to find Catalia. We must regroup. I'll have new men out here scouring the woods. Alpha Liam also wishes to speak to you. He is currently with his sister at the villa. Turn my back on her again. I tried not to imagine the worst as I closed my eyes. Darien was right. I needed to reach out and have another plan in place rather than just searching unthinkingly. I'm coming back. I reached the villa, my heart sinking with every step. I was returning to my queen without our pup. How was I going to face it? Her? Darien gave me a bottle of water and some pants, but I refused the water, simply taking the pants. I don't think I deserve water. I should have listened. I should never have gone so far out. I should have paid attention to what Kia was saying, but it was a tad too late right now. Her scent enveloped me. I closed my eyes, grasping onto it. I would never let on, but I was doing my best not to unravel completely. I needed her, her comfort, her embrace, her presence. Rayhan's and Liam's scents came from the room upstairs, along with Scarlett's. I adjusted my pants that I had just pulled out, before I pushed open the door to the room, seeing Kiara sitting on the bed while Dulsanra and Dante lay upon it. Both looked as grey as death, with red veins creeping along their bodies. Rayhan sat on the opposite side, holding Dulsanra's hand, his hair shielding his face, and I felt another storm of guilt. Because of my mistake, there was another casualty. Scarlett was rocking a sleeping Skyla in her arms gently, while Liam stood behind Kiara, arms crossed and a deep frown on his face. They all turned to me when I stepped inside, but my eyes were on Kiara's red puffy ones. She had cried a lot. I'm sorry, Amor. Alejandro. Liam said, frowning as he gave me a slight nod. Kiara stood up, her eyes filled with fresh tears as she looked at me before closing them. I had failed her. Nothing? She whispered, her voice trembling. I shook my head as Darien stepped into the room. She came towards me, her hand pressed to her chest. I pulled her against my chest, wrapping my arms tightly as she broke into stifled sobs. I rested my head on top of hers, closing my eyes as I inhaled her hazelnut chocolate scent that calmed me. Scarlett sighed, frowning as she looked at me. We will find her, Elijah is out there, and we will continue to search, but we need to let every pack know. If this is the doing of another group or some sort of uprising, we will indeed find an answer. I'm going to do that. I'll be putting the word out to the humans, too. Even if they see her, I'll put out a reward. I said, my voice hoarse due to the lack of water. Offer them a reward they can't refuse. The Rossi Empire has funds that you are welcome to take. Rayhan replied quietly as he looked up at me. As the eldest Rossi's son, He held the majority of the empire. I refused to take more than needed, not to mention he was the principal heir to his mother's entire side of wealth as well. Our eyes met, and I saw the pain in his stormy grey ones. I'm sorry that Del got caught up in this shit, I murmured. He gave a slight shake of his head, kissing his mate's hand. We are family, and I don't think she'd have been able to sit back and do nothing. Number F, he replied, trying to hide the emotions in his voice. Don't beat yourself up over it. But it was my fault. Kiara pulled away, taking the water bottle from Darien, unscrewing it, and holding it out to me. You need to drink something, and Darien, get him some food, she said quietly, her lips trembling. Forget food, set up the video call to all council members, I'm going to do this now. Fail not now, amor mio, I'm not wasting any more time. It's been hours since she was taken, I can't afford to lose any more time, I said quietly. Darien hesitated, looking between me and Kiara. That was a order by your king, move. I growled viciously, my aura rolling off me and forcing Darien to submit. I saw Kiara frown, but she said nothing. I walked over to the bed, looking at the two on it. What's wrong with them? Some curse. Liam replied quietly. I felt something else in the room when she was thrown against the wall. Those vein-like things traveled from Dante to her. I think anyone who tries to sabotage it will get affected, Kiara whispered. So, not only did I need to find Catalia, one needed to find a cure. Rehana, I don't want her to attempt the same shit, but do you think she'll be able to find some answers? I asked quietly. Or the witches? They owe us anyway. Tell her to contact them. Rehan nodded, taking his phone out, and I turned to Liam. Anything? Does your intuition tell you anything? I asked. He and Kiara both had the gift of knowing things. One I had blatantly ignored from Kiara. Nothing. He replied frowning, his eyes, which were always blazing the color of his wolf, met mine. But I'm going back out there and keep looking for her. The letters. Kiara whispered. There were two. What did they say? I asked her sharply. She opened her mouth, frowning as she struggled. A few moments passed, and she looked at us hopelessly. Kiara. Don't tell me you're unable to voice it. Liam replied, his eyes narrowing. Kiara nodded, her eyes pooling with tears. I closed my eyes. I stepped closer to her, cupping her face, the bond sparks rippling through us as I caressed her cheeks with the pads of my thumbs, brushing away the tears that streamed down her cheeks. We are going to figure this out, okay? I promised with determination, because I swear, anyone involved will burn. She nodded, and I pulled her close, my lips crashing against hers in a deep, passionate kiss. My arms tightened around her, one hand tangling into her hair as I held her close, needing her, needing this. I will bring her back to you. I kissed her cheeks, the taste of her salty tears mixing with the sweet taste of her mouth that lingered in mine. Alpha, everything is ready for you. Darien's voice came through the link. I turned away, not saying anything, and left the room, unable to ignore the pain I felt from Kiara, but I had to do this. For Kiara, for Catalia, for Dante, and for Dulsanra. I washed my face before grabbing a shirt and walked into the living room, where Darien had set up the laptop for me. The Alpha and Elders who were part of the council were on the screen, as were two of the High Witches of the Coven. This maybe they could help with. King Alejandro. Alan, the eldest member of the council, greeted. I won't waste time with greetings. Catalia, my youngest pup, was taken today, precisely 15 hours ago. My queen has received 2 letters, yet she cannot speak of what she's read. My son has some curse that even Dulsanra Silver, the Luna of the Black Storm Pack, could not counter. I'm calling a code red. I want every single group searching for her. For those that are in your area, I expect you to pass the message to those packs as well. I want everyone to find my daughter. I will send an outline of what exactly went down as soon as this call is over. Put out that if my daughter is found, the pack responsible will be given a substantial reward. As for the Coven, I hope someone can come to our location to see if they can provide any more insight into what is happening. The Alphas nodded. I could see they knew the seriousness of the situation. Very well, I will come, and I will get in touch with Janina. Magdalene, the High Witch of the Coven, said emotionlessly. I gave a curt nod. It wasn't like me to ask for help, but right now, I needed to pull out all the stops I had at my disposal. The witches and werewolves were at peace. We did not like each other much, but as the years passed, we began to blend and tolerate one another. I ended the video call and began typing the email, pulling up an image of Catalia. I had always kept my pups out of the public eye. This was the first time the entire country was going to see Catalia Tamia Rossi. I looked at her picture. This one was taken a few weeks ago. Her large, innocent eyes stared back at me, and I felt that suffocating guilt crush me again. I should have been able to protect her. Did I do the wrong thing by not going after her? Did I lose the only chance I had? That notice is reasonable. Get some rest. I'll attach her picture and send it off. Darien said softly. I'm doing it. I replied icily. I'll go make yourself useful and leave me alone. I growled dangerously, my eyes flashing red. He sighed and nodded, leaving the room and shutting the door behind him. I was not going to rest until I found her, and I would, even if I had to destroy the entire planet in the process, I would. Leave him. I glanced at Rayhan as I lifted Dante from the bed. You need to sleep too. He shook his head. I can't sleep anyway. Leave him here, I'll watch over them both. Our eyes met, and I nodded, feeling terrible. I'm so sorry, Ray. I whispered. He shook his head, giving me a small smile that didn't take away the emotions in his eyes that were riddled with worry and pain. We're family, and we stick together. You need to stop apologizing, he said, caressing Dulsanra's snowy white hair. She's a fighter, they both are, I nodded as I kissed Dante's forehead. How much pain was he in? Was he going to be okay? I looked over at Dulsanra, caressing her hair for a moment. She had 2 little pups, Aaron and Sienna. Goddess, they needed their mother. If Kiara... Rayhan's voice snapped me out of my thoughts, and he raised an eyebrow. They'll be okay. I nodded, unable to say anything, feeling absolutely devastated. I had to fix this. I had to get Catalia back. Liam had gone to see if he could track anything whilst Darien and Alejandro were working on putting the word out there. Mom was with Skyla, and Dad was out there doing what he could, too. Only I was doing nothing. Catalia. I stepped into the room, placing down the suitcase I had brought from the other room onto the floor of this room that Dante had once occupied, switching the light on and walking to the adjoining bathroom whilst trying to control the tears from spilling down my cheeks. I looked in the mirror, the words on the letters screaming in my head. I had to get them on paper somehow. What if I tried to write them? I splashed water on my face before returning to the bedroom and rummaging in Dante's things before I finally found his sketchbook and pencil case. Taking it over to the bed, I sat down, opened it up to a blank page, and took a deep breath. Pay the debt. I placed the pencil on the paper, my heart beating as I used all my willpower to try to write the words. Jarring pain rushed up my arm, but I didn't stop. I was a blessed wolf, and I was not going to let anything hinder me. I looked out at the glowing moon and let my aura surge around me, drawing power from the moon itself. I am not weak. I will not bend to whatever this was. I gritted my teeth as I continued, splintering pain tearing up my arm, but I needed to get it on paper. Debt. I could taste coppery blood in my mouth as I continued. My entire body was shaking by the time I managed the message on the first letter, my vision darkening as I wiped the blood that trickled out of the corner of my mouth. My hand was stinging, and it looked raw, my skin peeling as if it had been scraped against a grater. Goddess, what was this? The next line. Debt. The pen fell from my hand, searing pain making my vision darken, just as the door burst open. Kiara. I looked up as Alejandro caught me before I almost tumbled to the ground. The sparks from his touch were all that I could focus on, and the pain began to dissipate a little. Read it. I whispered, staring into his blazing red orbs. He didn't let go of me, holding me close as he grabbed the book. Pay the debt by the blood of the beast and yield to the Crimson King. He tossed the book down, grabbing my hand as my vision darkened. Hold on, amor mio, I need you. His words made my heart pound, and I clutched onto his shirt. I'm okay. I whispered, despite how exhausted I felt. You're bleeding. He growled, lifting me up. He carried me to the bathroom and placed me in the shower as he began to undress me gently yet swiftly. I watched him through my blurry vision. Even now, he kept his walls up, blocking off his emotions from me, something we rarely ever did. It hurt knowing he was hiding his pain from me, but I had pushed him to that. Have you eaten? I whispered. He didn't reply, just nodded. He hadn't. I know you well enough to know when you're lying. I scolded him lightly, staring at him under the spotlights of the bathroom. I don't have an appetite. He responded, examining my hand before he ran his tongue along it, sending my stomach into knots. Alpha saliva had healing properties that increased the rate of healing. He gently kissed my palm before letting go of me carefully as if worried I'd fall. I stepped back, leaning against the wall as he undressed and stepped into the shower with me, switching it on. A downfall of cold water hit me, and I gasped, clinging to him. He wrapped his arms around me, shielding me from the cold water before it warmed up. I didn't move away, my heart was aching, and his embrace was comforting. "We will find her, right?" I whispered, staring up into his eyes. He nodded, his wet black locks falling in front of his forehead. I reached up with my raw-looking hand, slowly healing, and brushed the strands back. "I can't live without her." I know I was putting pressure on him, but it was all I had. I needed her, and he was my only hope. "I know, amor mio, and I will make sure we find her," he murmured, kissing me deeply. Sparks coursed through me, yet there was nothing sensual about this kiss. It was deep, raw, and a silent promise that he'd do his best. I just hoped it was enough. Once we had showered, I mind-linked Darien to get someone to bring food upstairs. Alejandro was sitting on the bed in nothing but sweatpants, looking as handsome as ever. He was smoking a cigarette as he looked at the message in the book. When I had put on a nightgown, I was mind-linked by one of our men. "Luna, the food." "Coming." I pulled open the door and reached for the tray. My hand was pretty much healed but looked very raw and tender to touch. He lowered his head to me, and I thanked him before he closed the door for me. Alejandro looked up, frowning when he saw the tray. He stood up and came over, taking it from me. "I told you I wasn't hungry. Have you eaten yourself?" "Mom made me," I replied, sitting opposite him as he placed the tray down, clenching his jaw. We both fell silent, and I knew he was thinking about our little princess. "Do you think they'll hurt her?" I whispered, my chest tightening. "If they want something, I would hope not," he replied, his hand balling into a fist. "I pray to Selene that you are correct." I looked down, forking up some pasta and raising it to his lips. "Eat because we need you to keep your strength up, to find her," I encouraged softly. His brows furrowed as he took the bite, and I scooped some more up. We didn't need to speak, but the pain that weighed down upon us was only getting stronger. With each passing minute, it became harder. I knew my baby girl was out there. Alone. Had she eaten? Was she alone? Were they treating her humanely? "I've issued out a search for her and reached out to the human world. You never know where she may appear," he said as he drank some water. I could tell eating was hard for him, and I didn't blame him. "I'm also going to make a video to put out there on the dark web and let it circulate. If they want me, then I'm willing to trade places." As much as that hurt to know, for our baby girl, I knew we were both ready to make any sacrifice necessary. He picked up the notepad again and frowned. "I'm sure I'm the beast they're speaking of. But who is the Crimson King? That's who I need to find," he murmured. I nodded. "What about the attacks that have been occurring? Could it be linked?" He shook his head, placing the notepad down, and looked at me thoughtfully. "I doubt it. These wolves that ambushed us were not regular or nothing I've seen before. Whatever they are, it's something we've never encountered before." His words left an ominous feeling in the air, and we both fell silent. Putting aside the tray, he pulled me into his arms. Neither of us could sleep tonight, not when we knew our daughter was out there, facing goddess knows what, utterly alone. "Catalia, I'm scared. I want Mama and Daddy." I looked around the dark room. it was cold, and it didn't smell enjoyable. I'm afraid. My stomach was bleeding, too, and it hurt. The lousy wolf had bit into me. Why wasn't Daddy coming? Why was I here alone? I wrapped my arms around my legs, crying softly into my knees. Please come, Mama. I don't want to be here. The sound of the key scraping in the lock made my heart thunder with fear. Please go away. The screech of the metal door swinging open followed. I clamped my hands over my mouth, trying my best not to cry. I didn't want them to get angry, like when I started crying. Tears blurred my vision as a tall man with a dangerous feeling coming from him stepped into view. I'm scared, Mama. Daddy. His footsteps echoed on the metal steps, ringing in the room as I began to tremble. This man was more alarming than the other one from earlier, I could sense it from him. He was very tall, maybe taller than Daddy, he was huge too. He fixed his suit jacket, and just that move made me whimper. He was going to hurt me. I quickly got to my feet, looking up at him, his cold brown eyes stared down at me as if he was looking at something filthy. I pressed my lips together, being brave, just like Skyla and Dante. His face was scary, more than half of it was burned. I'm scared. This man was necessary, I knew that much. Sir, may I go home? I whispered, my voice shaking despite trying my best to speak politely. He tilted his head, looking me over. They got the wrong one. He hissed, his voice was scary, too, and I whimpered in fear, backing away. He walked towards me, and I cringed when his gloved hand twisted into my hair. It was hurting. Tears began tumbling down my cheeks as he scoffed. A useless pup. He hissed. He talked a bit differently, too. Was he from somewhere far away? I'm sorry. I whispered as he pushed me to the ground. This. I don't need this. She doesn't even have anything special. I rolled up into a ball, protecting my head as he kicked me once more before he turned and stormed up the stairs, leaving me alone in the dark room. I sobbed quietly, daring not to move from my position. Will you find me, Daddy? Moonlight Muse author number. Thank you for reading. Please drop a gem if you enjoyed this chapter. Also, a kind reminder to always be polite to each other. Let's keep the negativity away from the comments so everyone can enjoy reading and discussing. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.